Beyond the Locker Room with Tim Worley, where sports meets life. This isn't an X and O show. It's not about bad calls, bad coaching, or the college football playoffs. It's about the whys behind the negative headlines on today's collegiate and professional athletes. It's about character development and how the absence of life skills is destroying not just the careers, but the lives of the athletes. And here to take you beyond the locker room is your host, former University of Georgia All-American, 2013 SEC legend, and first-round NFL draft pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Tim Worley.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Locker Room. I'm your host, Tim Worley. This is my new weekly show that will come to you live every Monday night from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every week, I'm going to share with you social commentary about current events going on within the world of sports. Now, this isn't going to be a Monday night quarterback show, so no so-and-so should have done this or so-and-so should have done that. I'm going to talk to you about the whys. Yes, the whys behind the negative behavior patterns plaguing high-performing amateur and professional athletes. Those whys will be examined through the lens of my personal experiences as an All-American in college and a first-round draft pick in the NFL. Hopefully you'll get a better understanding about what these athletes are dealing with and what they go through on a daily basis. So that's what you can expect to look forward to here on Beyond the Locker Room. Now, I hope everyone had an outstanding weekend because I did. But at this point, I want to introduce and welcome a great friend of mine and a great friend of Beyond the Locker Room, Chris Mascaro. Chris is the host of the popular radio show Thursday Night Tailgate and a big part of why Beyond the Locker Room is on the air. And we are so grateful to him for all his support. Chris will be hanging out with me for a few shows, and I'm honored to have him as the guest co-host. So welcome, Brother Chris.
Hey, thank you, Brother Tim. It's an honor for me to kind of sit in the co-host chair with you, my friend. It's been an honor and a privilege, getting to know you and your lovely wife Dee, and having you guys as a part of our show, Thursday Night Tailgate. I honored you as a member of the Thursday Night Tailgate Hall of Fame a couple of months ago, which was a privilege, and you've been such an outstanding guest, on our show over the years, Tim. And like I say, it's a privilege to be here with you tonight, my friend.
Well, thank you, sir, Brother Chris. I'm grateful. I'm truly grateful. Dog Nation, let me hear from you. We had a huge win over the Auburn Tigers a couple of weeks ago and a very easy win over the Charleston Southern Buccaneers on Saturday. Now, if we can get a little help from our friends over in Arkansas. Doesn't that sound like Arkansas, Chris? They spell it says Arkansas. I like to call it Arkansas. I think my wife and I do, too. But if we can get a little bit of help, we can find ourselves back in the SEC championship. Now, shout out to my lovely wife, Dee, and the Crimson Tide Nation. A huge win 2 weeks ago over the number one team in the country, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And you know what, Chris? We were there. Dee and I were there. Yes, and I got to tell you, I got to be honest now. Now, this is all about love right here because, being in Tuscaloosa was an experience for me. And I'm talking about being in that huge stadium that they had. I mean, the energy was absolutely phenomenal. And, they treated an old dog like royalty there. But I tell you what, it's one of the things that I experienced. And I know we're on live radio, but I try not to talk about this too much, but I'm going to go ahead and let the cat out the bag. Alabama has a cheer. They have a cheer that they do whenever they get a first down. The announcer will come over the PA system, and he'll say, "First down, Alabama," and the crowd will go, "Roll Tide." And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I ain't Roll Tide. It's Go Dogs in the house, no matter where I'm at, right? But Chris, check this out. I found myself by the time the third quarter rolled around. The guy come over the PA system. He says, "First down, Alabama." And I found myself talking about Roll Tide. Woo! Boy, I was in foreign country. But I got to be honest, it was a great experience, man. Nothing like the energy in Tuscaloosa. And if you've never been to a game there, I encourage you to go watch a game there. But on the other side, the Alabama Crimson Tide got an easy win this past weekend over the Western Carolina Catamounts. Chris, let me ask you a question. What's a catamount? What is
That's
a
a good
catamount?
question, Tim. I might have to Google that one while you're doing the rest of the show. Figure out what is a catamount.
Wow, I think it's a wild cat or something. Maybe in the bobcat family.
Yeah, all right. I got the
catamount.
Google thing running, so
Okay,
we'll find out what one is.
Okay, but anyway, go Dogs and Roll Tide. Matter of fact, that's a little preview of what we're hoping to see here in a couple of weeks in December in Atlanta. But you didn't hear that from me, though. But anyway, the SEC continues to show why it's the toughest and the best conference in college football. So it was an exciting weekend in the Worley household, and I hope it was for you too. Okay, tonight I'm going to share my thoughts on 4 main topics. And the first topic we're going to talk about tonight is Mr. Todd Gurley. And our choices today set the path of consequences for your present and your future. And the second thing we're going to be discussing is I'll share my thoughts on Ray Rice. And we asked the question, what red flags do people ignore in his life as long as he was racking up yards and scoring touchdowns? Okay? Now, the third, we're going to talk about Private Can't Get Right himself, Florida State's own Mr. Jameis Winston. Now, this young man, ladies and gentlemen, he's crying out for help, and he needs to get it before he sabotages his life. But let me back up for a second, and I don't want people to think that I'm taking a shot at Jameis Winston. The reason I call him Private Can't Get Right is because I used to be Private Can't Get Right. And when I went through what I went through and learned from it, now my wife called me General Get Right. So we all start out Chris, as Private Can't Get Right, and all of a sudden when we graduate, we turn in and be responsible and do what we're supposed to do. We turn into General Get Rights. But with that, fourth, and the last thing we're going to talk about later this hour is leadership and how passivity in leadership kills everything that's connected to that leadership. But anyway, Chris, we're going to start it out talking about Todd Gurley a little bit and talking about choices and consequences. And, when it comes to Todd Gurley, everybody wants to talk about, what he did. He took money signing autographs. He did this, he did. I think it's pointless to argue about what if he took money. Everybody knows why he took it, and that's because he needed it. But the thing that we need to understand is there are rules, and not just young people, but adults too. There are rules, and there are also consequences to those rules. Todd broke the rules, and he suffered the consequences. Now, it's unfortunate he made a mistake, but the one thing I can say about this kid and being able to talk to him personally and be in his space and spend time with him, he's a man of integrity, and he has a huge heart. Now, this thing really floored him when he got in trouble with this, and he was able to accept this punishment and move on with his life, come back, had a successful game against the Auburn Tigers, but at the same time he came back and he blew his knee out. But one of the things that really stands out to me, and I don't want to think that I'm being biased right now, is that my beloved university, they took the proper steps of integrity to pulling him out of the game before the NCAA got wind of it. And that stands that's a sign of just integrity right there, because he could have denied it. He took one on the chin, and he came back and he did what he had to do. And it's unfortunate, Chris, that he blew his knee out when he came back. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, boy, I tell you what, I'm sure Dog Nation, everyone's heart sunk into their chest or into their stomach, I should say, when he went down. When you look at a talent, Tim, like Todd Gurley, a guy that, was, for a long time during this course of the season, until all of this sort of came up, he was one of the front runners for the Heisman Trophy. I mean, he was certainly leading the University of Georgia in the right path. Was starting to talk about them being one of the Final Four, perhaps, in the playoff system and all that sort of thing. So the young man's, era was clearly pointing way up. Now, you get sidelined with this, getting paid for his signature and that sort of thing, Tim. I don't want to get off too far on a tangent, but one of the things that drives me nuts about the NCAA is, boy, there's just, the rule book for what you can and can't do is so thick. I mean, they're trying to close every single loophole and what you can't do this and you can't have that. Kids certainly get their education, and that's a wonderful value, and that's a beautiful thing that they allow these kids to have the opportunity to do. But you know what? I mean, people can't buy these kids a pizza. because that's against the rules. And, I mean, to your point, he did it because he needed the money. He probably needed the money to go out on a date, probably needed the money to buy himself a pizza, probably needed the money, to have some fun while he's there. And, I did that. All that stuff drives me nuts. But, kind of getting back to your point about, him blowing out his knee, boy, it just seemed terrible that, he gets the opportunity to come back. He sort of served his time. And comes back out, off of the suspension, and the first thing that happens is he blows out his ACL, and that's just, such a disappointment for that young man, and what that could, potentially mean for his stock in the draft and that sort of thing. I guess at this point, Tim, we pray that that his knee heals properly, he gets all the rehab he needs, and he goes on to have a great career in the NFL.
Well, and that's a good point, Chris. I just believe that it's through the adverse times, through adversity, that we really show people and show ourselves what we're made of. Either you're going to fold and quit, or you're going to come out of it. I believe that the man that I met at the University of Georgia, Mr. Gurley, I believe that this guy is going to come out of this thing a lot stronger, a lot tougher. I mean, the talent is there. Ty Gurley is one of those guys that I feel like he could have came right out of high school, considered his first year that he had at the University of Georgia, playing on the highest level of football in the SEC. He could have came right out of high school and had an opportunity in the professional ranks. But I just look at this as this adversity. He's going to improve. He's going to grow spiritually. He's going to grow mentally. And he learned from his mistakes. And I just wish him the best and wish all the best to his family. And I'm praying that he would have a successful healing and that everything goes the way he desires it to go. But, yes. Okay. Now let's talk about Brother Ray Rice. And, Ray Rice has been in the media for several months now. The incident came back on video of him striking his wife in the face and dragging her out of the elevator. I mean, the whole world saw it. But when I look at this kind of things, Chris, my question is, what's really going on with this young man? What's really going on with any of these young athletes when they behave in certain ways, when they show that rage, when they start pressing the sabotage button, as I call it, because I did the same thing. And one of the things that I was able to experience and find out about myself, because everybody wants to look at the surfacey part. Everybody wants to look at the behavior and what they're doing and condemn them for their behavior. But what's really going on? If anybody ever stepped back and wondered what went on with this kid when he was a little kid, what did he see when he was growing up? What kind of anger or rage did he take on? What kind of things got planted in his heart? And see, we want to talk about the surfacey things, but I like to get underneath the ground and talk about what's driving a person to want to punch a woman in the face. What's driving a person to want to shove a line of cocaine up their nose? What's driving a person to want to commit sexual assault on a woman? There's something under the ground driving that. And we like to call it bitter roots, things, Chris, that got planted in our hearts, things that we planted in ourselves. And the reason I talk so passionately about it, because I had to figure out what was driving me to drink and to womanize and to abuse cocaine. And that bitter root that I came up with was the root of rejection. And that thing was driving me to do a lot of crazy stuff. And first of all, I didn't know who I was. I can relate totally to what a lot of these young men are going through, especially when they start pressing the sabotage button. But, everybody wants to look at the clinical side of things, but I like to get in there and look at what's going on in the heart. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, Tim, you make really good points. We hear so much about, the end result. But, very few times do we look back into a person's past to understand, why are they doing the things that they're doing? What's going on in their life, right? You never know what's going on in somebody else's life that drives them to do the things that they do. We just want to harp on, the bad things that they do and the end result. Well, you know what? Sometimes you got to step back and see, there is a root cause somewhere. And if we're going to stop the behavior going forward, we can't just always say, shame on you, don't do that again. Sometimes we've got to figure out what is the driver, and if you eliminate the drivers, then you're going to eliminate the behavior.
That's right. And I just believe, Ray Rice, he needs help. It's not that he needs to be unemployed. He needs help, and I really do believe, and I'm not condoning what Ray Rice did. You should never, ever, ever put your hands on a woman. And I'm not condoning that, but he needs help, and he also needs another opportunity because it's basically him against the world now. But, we need to start looking at the deeper side of things. And I just believe that, first of all, I don't believe it was the first time. And I don't believe it was the first time that anything like that happened. It was the first time it may have been caught on camera. But I don't think it was the first time. But we really got to figure out and dig up under the ground and see what's really driving that kind of behavior. And I can remember even as a kid things that I remember seeing growing up in my neighborhood, a little country town in North Carolina, Lumberton. A lot of things that I saw, man. I saw alcohol abuse. I saw domestic violence. I saw a lot of things, a lot of womanizing. And, Chris, when we were growing up, I'm 48 years old. When I was growing up, man, we were taught that the more women you have, the more of a man you are. We were taught that when you smoke your first joint, that's what makes you a man, or when you take your first drink of alcohol, that's what makes you a man. And, we were taught that these things were true, and we believed that, so we tried to model that. We went after those things that we saw in the neighborhood. But I found out later all those things were lies, man. They were all lies. And to me personally, a guy that whether he's a womanizer, whether he's an abuser, whatever, I just found out that guys that put notches, what we call putting notches on their belt, having women in every city, all that points to is their insecurity because they really don't know who they are. And it points directly to that. And I had to learn that the hard way because I never knew who I was. I began to know who I was probably about 10 or 12 years ago. And, we get put up there so high on the pedestal, and I can remember just the little things, and we're going to get into this a little bit later when we talk about Jameis Winston, but just the little things, man, things that I didn't even take serious, the things that looked good to me at the time, but in the long run, it ended up hurting me. Matter of fact, it ended up almost killing me. And so we got to really get in there and investigate and start pulling up those roots, those bitter roots, because they're oak trees now.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, some of that stuff is, to your point about the oak tree, some of that stuff has taken root at this point, and it's grown over years, and it's not always a quick fix, right? So you've got to be able to, sit down with these men. And Tim, how much of an advocate we on Thursday Night Tailgate have been for you to have the opportunity to really sit down, not only with the kids while they're in school, but the rookie symposiums and that sort of thing, to really be able to tell these guys what to look out for. Talk to them in some one-on-one situations where guys that you've already heard the whisper in the wind, right? Maybe a little bit from the college coach, maybe a little bit at the time while they were still in college, maybe after they got college and signed their first rookie contract, and now the money's starting to flow. Hey, this is the time to talk with these gentlemen to understand what's about to happen. And what are the signs that you need to be looking out for? And who are the people that are going to suddenly be thrown into your life that may not have your best interests at heart? It may look good, may sound good, but they're not. Their interests are about themselves. And we've been huge advocates for you to be able to sit down and talk to those folks, because I think that's the kind of education that they need. Now, some of these guys coming into these rookie symposiums are guys still in the league that continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over again, and we sort of get a chuckle out of it, like, dude, why are you in there telling these rookies about something you just did last week? Let's talk about the guys that have been to the valley and have crawled their way back up to the top of the mountaintop. Let's show them, don't do this, do this.
Right. And that's a good point. There's a quote I want to read that my pastor, Ron Carpenter Jr., he said this right here. He says, every adult problem is an unresolved child problem. And there's a lot of meat to that. Every adult problem is an unresolved child problem. Basically, what he's saying is, we get yoked with certain things as a child. Certain things get planted in our hearts. And if we don't deal with them and if we don't confront them, those issues are going to end up being our issue when we're adults. Those are the same things that we play out when we become adults. Because the scripture says, and I'm not going to preach tonight, but the scripture says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life. And, your heart is your garden. And that's why we talk about roots getting planted. Your heart is your garden. And your garden has 3 gates: your eyes, your ears, and your tongue. And whatever you're watching, whatever you're listening to, and whatever's coming out of your mouth, whatever you're speaking, eventually that will be your issue. And when I look at a lot of these young men today, there's a lot of things that got planted in their hearts. And even today, Chris, it's rough out there, man. When we look at the televisions and we see the commercials and we see all these things, I just believe that 8, 9, 10-year-olds shouldn't be looking at televisions and seeing perverted lifestyles. It just shouldn't be, because why? They're not mentally mature enough to handle those things, and we're getting a lot of things forced on them, But it has to be a different way. But when I look at Ray Rice, man, I really do. I'm a man of faith, and I forgive, And the guy is obviously fighting something. He's fighting something, and I just believe that it is a whole lot deeper than what people really want to talk about. And also, by the time we get caught, we've gotten away with it a million times. And that also comes from the just the casual approach that we have to things, because there's money involved, there's this involved, there's that involved, and everybody wants to look good, But men got to get to a place where they're not afraid to lean out and reach out for help. They're not afraid to cry out for help, because we were taught that men don't cry, we don't wear our feelings on our sleeve. But you know what? That's the reason why women live longer than men, because they do wear their feelings on their sleeve, and they don't have heart attacks like men have heart attacks. And we try to tough everything out instead of getting it out. And I just believe, passivity, man. Passivity was my greatest thing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. But, yeah, man, we got to get in there and start pulling roots up and getting that stuff out of the ground so these guys can move forward and live productive, successful lives, man. I'm just tired of seeing the athletes sabotage their careers and their lives. But anyway, okay, we're moving right along here. Now, our next topic, we're going to talk about Jameis Winston. And as we know, Jameis Winston has been in the news and the media for a couple of years now, some positive, a whole lot negative. And my take on Jameis Winston, first of all, I love to just meet with him and talk to him. I had an opportunity to meet Jameis at the Walter Camp 25th year reunion All-American thing this past February, up in New Haven, Connecticut at Yale University. And just had a chance to shake his hand real quick. But I just like to sit down and just talk to him and pick his brain a little bit and just basically just look him in the eye and tell this young man, listen, brother, you need to slow down. Just slow down. Because he doesn't realize, Chris, that the choices that he's making today, they're actually preparing the consequences for the present and his future life. Because nobody is exempt from sowing and reaping what you sow. Nobody. And if he keeps acting this way, sooner or later you're going to have a lot of people, they're not going to want anything to do with him. But, I can't just blame Jameis Winston. I look at the people around him. He has a lot of people around him that are in authority roles, and they just seem to keep letting things happen. What kind of message are we sending? What are we sending this kid? What are we sending these athletes when we let them get away with stuff? And I use myself as an example. I got away, Chris, with a lot of stuff, but in the long run, guess what? Those things that I got away with, they came back to haunt me and almost destroyed me. And right. I just want to be an advocate, man, for a spokesperson for these young men. Say, hey, man, slow your roll. Slow your roll. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I mean, when I think about Jameis Winston, I mean, the most recent thing we've seen, video of, right? Kevin Hart down there doing some stand-up saying, quit doing stupid stuff, which is the thing you want, you want to get it down to its roots, right? Or you want to talk about it at its lowest point. That's the thing you want to say. Quit doing stupid stuff, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you talk about slow down, Tim, one of the things that resonates with me is, look, Jameis, the money's going to come. Right, it's going to be there. Whether it's if he decides to leave Florida State this year or not, the money's going to be there, and life is going to get real good real fast. Just hang in there for a little bit. That's kind of one of the things talk to Todd Gurley about is you're getting back to him. The $20,000 that you get for signing your name on some things is going to be nothing compared to what's going to happen when you sign your first NFL contract. Sort of the same stuff for Jameis Winston. Look, son, you've already got one Heisman Trophy, and boy, you could have who would have thought, Tim? I'm sure everybody would have thought, I should say, a few weeks back, that he could have challenged Archie Griffin to be the first man to win 2. If he'd have just done the right things, kept himself clean, another Heisman Trophy was probably there's probably a 50-50 chance he walks away with that thing. But now, when you think about all the kind of stupid stuff he's done, voters are going to take a step back and go, yeah, you keep pulling Florida State out, you're getting some wins, you could go undefeated 2 years in a row. But you know what? I can't get myself to vote for you a second time. So I think you have a really good point about the mantra of slow down. So slow down. You're going to be all right.
Yeah, he just needs to slow his roll. And I got to quote another thing that my pastor Ron Carpenter said. He said, "If nobody can tell you anything, pain will be your only teacher." That's called for a repeat. If nobody can tell you anything, pain will be your only teacher. I say that so passionately because guess what? Pain became my only teacher. And Chris, I look back and I think back and I try to remember how I was thinking when I was 21 years old. How was I thinking when I was 22 years old and the Pittsburgh Steelers dumped a couple of $1 million in my bank account? What was I thinking? Even before that, how was I thinking when I was in high school? How was I thinking when I was a student athlete at the University of Georgia? Now, let's take this thing way back. I can remember as a little kid between the ages of 11 and 12, middle school, high school, how I got favor. You got that favor. Why? Because I could run a football. I could throw a football. I could dunk a basketball. I could hit a baseball a mile. I could throw a baseball 95 miles an hour and run like a deer. And so when you're doing those things, it's like an automatic people gravitate to you. And not just the fans or whatever, but the people that you look up to, teachers, coaches, and all of a sudden you find yourself being favored. I call it favoritism, and that stuff comes back to haunt you. You find yourself being able to do things that everybody else can't do. Why? Because they consider you special. But what kind of message is that sending people? I had a lot of accountability people in my life that told me things that I needed to hear. And, for me, our generation, like I said, I'm 48 years old. Our generation, we knew better. We just rebelled. The generation today, they just don't know. They just don't know. Why? Because I feel like we fumble the ball. We just rebel. And, I knew better. I knew better in a lot of areas. But guess what? When people keep telling you how great you are, and when you keep doing stuff and there's no consequences, guess what? Guess what kind of message that sends? And you know what? You're gonna end up on the wrong side of the track if you continue, because sooner or later, your sin will find you out. And I'm just a true believer, man. When yes, your talent and your gifts will get you in the room, but it's your character that sustains you. But if you have a great gift and you get in the room and you have no character, no great character, you better take a picture of that room. Why? Because you're not going to remain in that room long. And that's the message I try to get to these young people. Listen, man, there's a lot of people out there with talent. but you have to have the great character that comes with it, man. You have to be able to remain and not just be a one-trick pony. That's what I call it. And I just look at the responsibilities, Chris, that was laid on my life as an NFL football player, man. I couldn't handle it. Why? Because nobody was teaching me what nobody was teaching. I was being taught everything on the football field to do, but nobody was teaching me about life. Nobody was teaching about what to do with money. I had a lot of the wrong people in my circle, you know. But it's not easy, and these guys need to take what they can get right now. Take the advice of people that have been there, not just the people that have failed and got back up, but also the people that have been victorious with their athletic career, people that have gone on and done great things. You know, you got to take both sides. But young people need to listen. There's a reason they call it wisdom, you know. We've been there before. Please listen to us. What's your take on that, Chris?
Well, I guess the question, Tim, that I have, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners here tonight have, is when you were in that very similar position. You hear so many, the younger generations, and we were once the younger generation, and people tried to tell us, our parents, our school teachers, the people in our churches, and all that sort of stuff, tried to tell us things, but we don't always listen. We know better, right? We know everything. Young people, they know everything. They don't need, I don't need your advice. But when you were going through it, what would it have taken for someone to say to you, Tim, let me pull you aside. Let me tell you, here I'm seeing the people that you're hanging out with. I'm seeing the things that you're doing when you're away from the locker room, when you're away from the team, when you're not in school. I see the stuff that's going on, and what you're doing. You need to change, because if you don't change, you're going to end up down this other path. What would it have taken for someone to open your eyes? And how can you take that now? Because I know you're trying to do it, and I know you spend time with, the Tennessee Titans earlier this year. And what do you think it takes to get through to young people so that they respect you? And we talk about, you've told us so many times, we talk about old man strength. That's something you introduced us and taught us about. But not just the old man strength with the physical strength, but the old man strength in the wisdom and in the mind. What does it take to get through? What would it have taken to get through to you? And how are you trying to, look back on yourself and say, you know what, this is what probably would have worked for me, and now I'm going to try to translate that to help other people?
Well, what would have worked for me is, number one, my mom and my dad in school with me, taking a board upside my head while I was in school and in the NFL. But that wasn't.
Now we're getting into Adrian Peterson. We haven't talked about him yet.
Exactly. But you know what? I tell this story and jokingly, but my parents. Yeah, we're not going to talk about Adrian yet, but we'll get to that. But see, my parents, they always ask a question. My mother asked me this question. She said, "Why do you wait to become a grown up to start messing up?" My troubles didn't start, really, the outer troubles didn't start until I left my parents' house. Because when I was in their house, they had my complete attention. I ain't caused no trouble. My daddy could weld that strap, bro. Believe me. And he didn't have to raise his hand. All he had to do was come in the room, boy, and it was complete silence. But once again, I think I'm grateful for the way my parents raised me. But, the question, you asked the question, what would it take? What would it have took for me, and what would it take today? I just believe that relational, you have to relate. You have to be able to relate, and you have to be able to build relationships. And one of the things that I was able to do when I worked with the Titans a little bit this summer, I just came in and did a couple of sessions, hour sessions with the rookies, and talked about things. But one of the things that I found out when I was being introduced to the rookies, Chris, is, I observed them when I was being introduced, and they all were down, the heads in the phones and this and that, not really paying attention. But soon as the gentleman that introduced me said former first round pick, that all their heads came up. Every one of their heads came up. Because there's something about that being a first round pick, it got their attention. And when I got their attention, I had the ability, and I saw I had their attention, so I command their attention. And when I went in there, I was able to talk to them about things that they can relate to, Talk to them about things that I went through as a rookie. Talk to them on the level that they're on right now. I didn't go in and talk to them over their head about things. I brought it right down to where a 21-year-old and a 22-year-old could understand. And that's one of the things that I had an opportunity to do. And you know, to be honest, you know, a lot of the young men, they paid attention. Because I can remember the second time I came back, they were looking for me. And one of the things that God has put in me, Chris, I don't water stuff down, man. I don't water stuff. I tell the truth. I'm going to tell. If you want me to be, I don't know how to be fake. And if you want me to tell a lie, I can't do it. I'm going to tell you straight truth. Because why? I've been to hell and made it back only by the grace and mercy of God. Only by his grace and mercy. And since I've made it back, I am going to reach back and try to help these young men. And I just feel like God is putting something in my heart and in my entire existence, in my purpose, to reach back and help men to become men to take responsibility. And it's not too young to take responsibility. And what these young men don't understand is they have an opportunity and a platform to change the lives, not only their lives, but the lives of their families for generation to generation, and also the lives of the people that look up to them, you know? And it's very unfortunate that athletes get labeled as role models, because I just don't think every athlete is a role model. I think your parents should be your first role models, you know?
Right.
But we look up to these athletes, and some of these athletes, man, they just don't get it, and they're not going to get it. But you know what? I'm going to keep trying, and maybe somebody out there will hear my story and hear the stories of some of the other guys that have gone through rough times, even the successful guys, and listen to what they got to say and come out of it. Because I am so sick and tired of hearing about athletes blowing it and losing everything that they have, just like I did. And you know what? I call myself a curse breaker, Chris. I'm a curse breaker. That foolishness stops with Tim Worley. It ain't going to hit my children when me and Dee decide to have children. It ain't going to hit my children. What do you think, Chris?
That's great.
Yes,
I tell you,
sir. Yes, sir.
One of the things that that you said here a moment ago, Tim, about character and character getting you in the room, can also be what clears the room. That's kind of one of the things that I think guys need to understand is you're who you are and the status you have because you played the game and you played it really well can get you in the room. And the room can be anything, right? The room can be to do a radio show like you're doing tonight. The room can be it's an awards banquet or something along that lines. Or the room can be ESPN Sports Center or any of those sorts of things. It can, your record on the field can get you in there. But if your character doesn't light up the room, it can clear that room pretty darn quickly, right? If people don't want to be around you, if you're not the sort of person that someone can look up to and respect, if you're doing all the wrong things, that room is going to start thinning out more and more and more until you're the only one left in that room because people have decided you're not a winner, right? And they've sucked you dry. Right. They've taken all your money. They've taken, where you can get them in, whether you're getting them in a club, whether you're getting them into, this event or that, and they've done all of that, and they've left you with nothing because your character has said, I'm not worth being around. And I think that's right. We've seen so many of these guys start to go down that path, which is a shame because they have so much talent. And I think about Jameis Winston with the talent that young man has. Boy, what great things he could do, right? Tim, you have taken the role of being able to do great things for other people, right? Show them the right path, show them what to look out for, and be a light for those folks. Right? And that's why people gravitate to you. That's why I gravitate to you. We've met so many great guys, and I talk about our show, but we've met so many great guys that have that about them, that people want to gravitate to them and sit down and just listen to you tell stories. That's what's great about this show and what it's going to evolve into. That's what's great about the 20, 30 minutes that we get to have you on our show is because we get the opportunity to listen to you speak because you light up a room. Well, if you lack the character, and you can't do that, and there's no one's going to be listening. No one's going to want to be around you. And I think that is the opportunity wasted, because talent is great, but character is greater.
That's right. And this, and the reason, we can talk the way we talk now, because, I don't live that way no more. And I don't sit back and look down my Pharisaical nose and judge everybody. I got bitten before, and I got hit hard in things that I chose to do. And I don't blame anybody, Chris. I don't blame anybody for my downfall, because I chose to do things a certain way, and they came back and they almost destroyed me. But, when it comes to mentoring, and when I look back, I wish I had a mentor in my life, somebody that could tell me the things that I really needed to know, and somebody that was going to steer me in the right direction. But also I look back, was I really listening then? What kind of people did I want in my life? What kind of people was I attracting to my life? Because back then I want whatever I wanted, when I want it, how I want it, And when you're a type of person that 100% following your flesh, I can't do nothing for you. But when it comes to mentoring, first of all, a mentor is not impressed with you. A real mentor, he's not impressed with what you got. He's not impressed with who you are. A mentor is going to tell you what you need to hear. A mentor is going to be tough with you. A mentor is going to have grace. But a mentor is going to be that person that's totally not impressed with you. He's going to help you and talk to you about what's really going on. If you're acting like an idiot, he's going to tell you. If you're acting like a gentleman, he's going to tell you. But a mentor, and this is the key, they're not impressed with you in any phase. And we need more of that. But see, we live in such a offense society now that you can't say anything to anybody because everybody's offended. But see, the Bible talks about in the last days, great offense will come. But see, where everybody's offended now, you can't say nothing to anybody. But you know what? I just believe that sometimes you got to get angry in order to move forward. And you know what? When I went through recovery, through alcohol and drug addiction, I had a counselor that finally, somebody that I know that God sent into my life to help me pull up those bitter roots that I talked about. Okay? And this gentleman stood toe-to-toe with me. He was able to pull things out of me, Chris, that I'm seriously, we almost came to blows. I wanted to put him through a wall. But he stood this ground with me, and he didn't care how big and strong I was, because why? He saw something in me, and he saw that character defect that I had in me that was sabotaging to destroying everything that I put my hands to. And he helped me get that thing up out of me. And to this day, I thank this man for this. I thank this man because he helped me. And we got to be able to talk to each other and be truthful with one another without being offended. You know what I mean? And so sometimes you got to get angry. You got to get angry. I'm not going to sit around and tickle your fancy all the time. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth. And it makes me look at what I do now. I'm a chaplain at a homeless shelter, and you're talking about a humbling experience, Chris, and just some of the people that I'm dealing with, just men. I mean, brother, men between the ages of 30 and 75. I mean, just grown children. But see, it makes me look back of how I used to think. I was a big 25-year, 30-year-old kid. Didn't know nothing about life. Spoiled. And see, when we can admit these things, that's when we can move forward. You know what I mean, Chris?
Right. No,
yes,
absolutely right.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so that's the key right there. We have to, as a lot of these young men, they have to stop just letting people in their circle of trust that's going to tell them what they want to hear, and let people in their circle that's going to tell them what they need to hear. Because, I would love to mentor a lot of these, not just these superstars, but a lot of these young men that are out there and have opportunities to change their lives and the lives of their families, man, because they need it. They need it. We come from a fatherless generation today. And with that father missing in the house, these young men, they feel like they're abandoned. They feel like they're on their own. And you get so used to mama's voice. And us, big ups to moms, because moms had to step in and do what dads wouldn't do. And I'm grateful for the mothers that are able to do that. But guess what? A father is an authority figure. A father is to establish authority. Mothers are to establish. They nurture, and it's not women. They're not designed to just establish order in the home and authority. That's the father's position. So what am I saying? Is that most of these young men, they get so used to hearing the mother's voice, by the time they get out in the real world, they realize that coach don't sound like mama. You know what I mean? That supervisor on the job don't sound like mama. The police officer don't sound like mama. So when they hear that voice of authority, what do? They buck it. They buck it, and they try to go against it. And guess what? When you can't restrain yourself, they got something to restrain you. They got something to restrain you. Hey, I was a big, strong guy, 250 pounds back in 2008. That taser that I ran into restrained me in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, man, that taser knocked me right on the ground, Chris. And I tell you what, I called out to Jesus, and he showed up. But yeah, man, we're having fun. But this is a great topic, and I just love discussing things like this, because a lot of men out there really need to hear these things, and I just thank God for real people. Okay, our next topic. Is there anything else you wanted to say about the Jameis Winston situation, Chris?
No, I think you did really well. I think it's time to move on to your next topic.
Okay. Now our next topic is leadership and passivity, and how passivity kills leadership. I look at a lot of the coaches today. I look at a lot of people in those authority roles, and I go back when I was a kid, when I was coming up through junior high and high school, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier that, even those authority figures, man, they can be kind of casual with things and casual about the way they do things, especially with the superstar. Because the superstar, he gets favor. And I can just remember, man, a lot of things that I got away with. A lot of things that I got away with, Chris. And by the time I ended up retiring at 30 years old in Chicago from the Bears in 1996, those things that I got away with, I didn't know what to do with myself. And I look at that thing, and it's what is it doing? It's not really strengthening us. It actually makes us weak. And I found out when I left the game that I was not prepared for life. And I can point directly back to that area as a young 18-year-old kid that kind of slid through stuff and got away with stuff. But do I blame those people? Of course not. I don't blame those people, because I was a willing participant. And I fell into it. But at the same time, I still do believe that at some point somebody should step up and hold these young men accountable. I look at the casual approach when it comes to a lot of these athletes today, and I look at the entitlement. When I happened to see at a practice one time, rap music on the practice field as they're warming up. What do you think of that, Chris? And I'm serious. And I think back, and I'm like, the coaches that I played for, would they allow me to be blasting rap music as we warm up on the field? And it's a different time now, but I'm like, man, what a casual approach to things. What do you think of that, Chris?
When you think about discipline, Tim, and making sure that guys are doing the things that they're supposed to do, particularly on the practice field, that it's certainly a different day, right? This generation versus our generation, the one in between, the one certainly that preceded us. The work ethic and what we deem to be proper, and what we could have gotten away with, or how we were disciplined, or all of those sorts of things, very different than what goes on today. And I think it kind of gets back to the comment that you started this out with, entitlement, right? I think we felt like we owed it to the team. Everything was always about the team. Now, that's not saying that it's not today, and I'm not saying that, but it seems like more like players are saying, "What's the team going to do for me?" as opposed to what can I do for the team, right? I mean, we saw it this week, and Tim, you played for the Steelers. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I'm a Steelers fan. When I look at LeGarrette Blount, who walked off the field prior to the game ending, got dressed and left because why? I didn't get enough carries in this game, right? Everything was about Le'Veon Bell, so now I'm mad. Why? Because it's all about me, right? It's about my carries. It's about my opportunity to get on SportsCenter. It's not about that the team won. It's not about the fact that Le'Veon Bell carried the team to a great win, come from behind against, the Tennessee Titans and had 204 yards, and it was working well, and the rhythm was going, and he stuck in there, and he was, executing the plays. It wasn't that. It wasn't and it wasn't the fact because those guys were supposed to be friends. Pitchers together. They got in trouble together in this off season, right? It wasn't about my friend doing really well, and I'm happy for you. What it was about was I didn't get my chance, so I'm mad. So I'm walking out on the team, right? And we saw it, 2 or 3 times this past week, Tim, with Ahmad. I'm losing my train of thought for the linebacker in San Francisco, who did something similar, right? We've seen it time and time again where it's about them. It's about me and what's good for me, not what's good for the team. And I think it's the disciplined approach, because in the past, right, you're going to be on the bench, son. You're going to be on the bench and you're going to watch until you figure out that you need to be part of this team, right? You're not going to get playing time. Well, the generation's a little different now. Now I walk off the field and I'm going to walk away and I'm going to blame you, and it's your fault, and you're not doing what's right for me, and you're disrespecting me. And I can't tell you how upset I was at LeGarrette Blount for doing that. And now I'm not rooting for the young man because I thought he was making his way back from that sort of, those, you talk about character. That shows some character right there. That told me everything about his character that I needed to know, because I thought, from what he did when he was, the punch in the fight, when he was in Oregon, and how that went down, to, he's had a couple other missteps along the way. I'm hoping and I'm thinking, maybe this kid's coming about. He's maturing. He's getting a little older. Not so much.
Yeah, and Chris, tremendous talent. And I was going to say, I remember him from Oregon when he punched the guy from Boise State.
Right.
I was actually watching that game, and even with that, you found scouts in the NFL. They still gave this kid a chance. Why? Because he had tremendous talent. He's a great running back. And I look at his athletic career. I look at him when he played for the Patriots last year. He had a phenomenal game in that cold game that the Patriots played against the Denver Broncos. I mean, he had over 200 and something yards. I think so. But he, when you see that, and but see, what I'm trying to get to is, what makes you think you can even attempt to do that? Walk off the field before the game's over and get dressed and try to get on the bus. There's something there that tells you that you're allowed to do that. Somewhere along the line, you are allowed to just take shortcuts. And also, not just LeGarrette, but I look at both times, Bo Wallace at Ole Miss, I watched him exit the field before the game was over. Why? Because he was having a bad game. Now, I tell you, man, and I think Bo Wallace is a good kid, but, you look at that character. How is this stuff allowed? What's going on in not just in the player's mind, but the coach's mind, where this stuff can happen? And I ask myself that question. I look at a lot of these, from what I see, there's no respect, there's no honor, and there's just, because a lot of these coaches, man, they seem like they're intimidated by these players. Now, I could be wrong, but a lot of them feel like, hey, man, you're a grown man, you make more money than I do, you can do what you want to do. But, there was a time, man, I mean, just that authority figure, that authority role, we just honored and respected it, and I still do, even to the point of teachers, man, But see, now, like you said, entitlement, and just a different time now when people just don't care. They just don't care, but it's got to get better, man. It really has to get better. But anyway.
Agreed.
Okay. Keith, how much time we got on this thing? Got plenty of time?
You got about 5 minutes to
about 5
share
minutes?
some final thoughts, or wrap it up, or talk about next week.
Okay, well, This is what we'll do. There's a few points I want to make real quick, about 30 seconds about passivity. You know, I was such a passive person, Chris, and passivity is one of the things that drove me to destruction because I allowed a lot of stuff in my life and I never confronted it. And when you don't confront issues, eventually you're going to explode. And I went through 6 or 7 years of rage because I didn't confront issues. I allowed people in my circle that were stabbing me in the back. I allowed things to happen in my life, and I never confronted. Why? Because I was the people pleaser, and I wanted people to like me. And those things almost destroyed me. And I found out I wasn't a peacemaker. I was a peace faker. And when you become a peace faker, eventually you're going to become a peace taker. And that's where the rage came in me. And that's what we saw when I got arrested in 2008 in Atlanta when I got tased by that police officer. And that's the thing that changed the game with me. And I had to go through a process of releasing all that anger and pulling up those bitter roots that we were talking about earlier. But it's all passivity, and we have a lot of men that are very passive today. And passivity just kills. It just destroys leadership. And we just have to cut out that casual approach to things and really be truthful and serious about what we do as men. As men. But it looks like, Chris, we got a few minutes left. And I guess we'll close this thing out. It's been a great show, man. I love just getting on the phone and in the studio and just talking with my good friend and talking about issues. And but I tell you, we're going to close this thing out, Chris. And I'll tell you, like I always say, this is one of my sayings. We're going to do like the Red Sea. We're going to split. Okay. Okay. So right. Listen, I just want to tell you, Chris, great job tonight. I appreciate you coming on and being a co-host. And listen, next week I'll be discussing complacency in today's successful athlete, and that'll be a hot topic. But I want to remind everyone how you can connect with us. My website, our website, DNI, Worley Global Enterprises, WorleyGlobalEnterprises.com. You can sign up for updates, listen to our show archives, and check out our blog there. My Twitter handle is @WorleyGlobalBiz. And please also check out our page on Facebook at facebook.com/WGEINC and give us a like. Chris, tell everyone how they can connect with you on Thursday Night Tailgate.
Yeah, absolutely. Our show is live on here on Blog Talk Radio, and you can find us across great internet sites like iHeartRadio. Just picked us up. Very excited about that. Find us on Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, Player.fm, all those places. We're on live 8 to 10 o'clock, and also Boost Radio. I don't want to forget those great guys over on Boost Radio. They pick us up on Friday nights. But we're on 8 to 10, and we talk with 5 great guests every single week. We're great partners with the guys over at the NFL Alumni Association, so we have 5 former players joining us every single week sharing their stories. You can find us online at ThursdayNightTailgate.com. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can find me at CT Mascaro. My co-host Bob Lazari is at Bob_Lazari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. But always a great privilege to be on the either show, Tim, with you, because you're such a dynamic speaker and someone that we think very, very highly of.
Well, thank you, my friend. My thanks to our announcer, Joe Laganusa, for the great job he does with our intro. And on behalf of myself and Chris, we thank everyone for listening. We appreciate you most. And until next week, good night. And remember, refuse mediocrity. All right. Bye.